Welcome and good evening. So tonight I've got some information that I want to share with you, some tips and some traps. But just as an introduction on social media, is that social media, if we distill social media down into business networking, I'm going to challenge you tonight to change your thinking a little bit about the way that you manage your personal brands. Is that we as individuals have personal brands, and as professionals we can manage those brands, especially with LinkedIn. And social media is becoming a collaborative tool. So what we're going to do is do a bit of a 101 journey and guide over LinkedIn. We're going to talk about social media in general. I'll provide you some tips and traps. And if you've got those burning immediate questions, then I'll try and cover those. So just thinking about social media, how many of us have a LinkedIn account? If you could show hands, okay? How many of us have a Twitter account? Excellent. How many of us use Pinterest? Okay. What about Facebook? How many of us are on Facebook? Excellent. Okay. And we'll talk about the distinguishing facts of Facebook as opposed to a business professional. But social media in general is about creating conversations and collaboration. But what it's doing is it's challenging traditional business norms, and it's also challenging traditional marketing approaches. Social media, in my view, is essential, and it's essential for businesses and professionals, and not because it's trendy or popular, because it has a business purpose that you can apply in your daily lives. And it's certainly not an experiment. It has to be fit for purpose, and you may know of friends of yours or companies that seize the wave of every new thing from a social media perspective. You see companies that have a Facebook page and a LinkedIn company page, and they're on Pinterest, and they're on Tumblr, and they're on Flickr, and la. But my question that I ask of people like that is, from a fit for purpose test, why are you on some of these social media sites? And if we turn that around and think about networking, tonight is a networking event, and sometimes we lose sight in the whole social media vibe that networking is about coming to events like this. It's dealing with people face to face, it's swapping and receiving business cards, and then it's following that contact up online. And you can also generate those contacts online and then move them to the virtual world as well. But what I'm encouraging you to think about is networking in this kind of environment is not dead, and it never will be, because as humans we do want to network with our peers in a face-to-face environment. The question that I have for you, and I'm going to get you to turn to your neighbours and have a bit of a chat about this, is that if we, and there was a big show of hands for LinkedIn and for Facebook, how do you deal with certain circumstances in social media, and would you call that or classify that your own personal social media strategy? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that.
Who are you? And they would say, oh, I am blah, 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 you were my professor.
The reason that I asked you to talk about that amongst yourselves is that often we work for organisations that might have a corporate policy on using the internet, but as individuals we also need to think about having our own strategy, how we deal with occasions where we get connection requests or requests to do things on LinkedIn that we don't feel comfortable with. So if there's one thing I want you to take away tonight, it's to think about a strategy. And what I've put on the screen behind me is a strategy that's well known across social media, which is a hub and spoke strategy. And a lot of companies will use their website as their hub, and then they'll use social media as their spokes and drive business into their hub website. As professionals and as individuals, we might use our hub as LinkedIn. That could be our hub, because it's about managing our own personal brands. You do need your own personal social media strategy / policy. One of the other things that I get asked a lot about is, how long should I spend on LinkedIn? Once you've got your profile to 100% complete, you can pretty much do everything you need to do on a daily basis within 5 to 10 minutes. And having some objectives and some goals, because a lot of people say to me, but getting your profile to 100% takes a bit of time and effort. And yes, it does, but you might then use your strategy to say, I will spend a certain number of minutes each week updating and getting my profile to 100%. We do have to bear in mind that sometimes we are looking at LinkedIn while we're at work, so please be aware of your corporate policies around the use of social media. Most businesses now allow internet access to LinkedIn because it is a business tool. And one of the underutilised things in LinkedIn is using it as a research tool. All of us will do a Google search when we're searching for something, but how many of us think of LinkedIn or other social media sites as an alternative or a supplement to Google to actually do research? And we'll talk some more about that as well. Management and moderation, a lot of things that are happening in the social media sphere are being moderated, and LinkedIn has some specific rules around the way they moderate the information that appears in their site. And social media and anything that we do from a business social media perspective has a link to traditional branding. And we're seeing more and more on LinkedIn with the introduction of company pages that companies are utilising the listing of a company page in LinkedIn to create some buzz around their brands. So some statistics just to show you. This is global statistics, is that LinkedIn now has 200 million active users, and you can see that Facebook is in the billions. YouTube, and YouTube gets forgotten about sometimes from a social media perspective, but it's got 800 million users. And again, if you decide to use YouTube, believe it or not, as a research tool, you'll be surprised how many great videos there are about program management, project management. A friend of mine said, I was struggling with learning how to use my new drill that I bought at Mitre 10. Well, there was a video on YouTube that showed him how to use it. So LinkedIn has 200 million users globally, but what about from a New Zealand perspective? So LinkedIn has over nearly 750,000 active profile users. So it's a big business-to-business database of professionals. So you can see there that a lot of the focus is on Facebook, but from a business perspective, LinkedIn is the most active business social network. What I want to do is just talk a little bit about content, because some of you may be linked to others, maybe like me, who share quite a bit of content. But there is content and there is content. And those of you that have seen, especially maybe on Twitter, the people that are all about shouting about themselves and endless self-promotion and spamming, sooner or later those people turn you off. And there are some of those on LinkedIn as well. But again, the ability on LinkedIn is you control who you network with and you connect with. And once you connect with somebody, and if you feel that it's not going very well, you can either turn them off, you can mute them on your homepage, or you can just disconnect. And disconnecting from people on LinkedIn isn't frowned upon. It's not like this big stigma where you get unfriended on Facebook. Because our networks change and grow as we change and grow. So if you haven't looked at all of your contacts for maybe 6 months or more, go in and have a look, because there's probably some in there that maybe you don't want to be connected with anymore. And just realise that they're probably doing that to you as well. So it's okay to do a bit of a spring clean of your contacts if you want to. The interesting thing about social media and about LinkedIn is the use of tablets and smartphones. How many of you have a smartphone and use the LinkedIn app on your smartphone or your tablet? Just raise your hand. Quite a few. So the penetration of users who use these devices rather than a traditional web browser is changing. For example, in Facebook, every day 600 million people access Facebook through a smart device. How many of us use the Card Munch application for LinkedIn? Have you heard of that? Okay, so LinkedIn has a smartphone application, so it's for Windows, Android and Apple, where at networking events like this, where you get a card from somebody, you take a photograph and it uploads it to LinkedIn, comes back to you and tells you whether that person's on LinkedIn, and then you can do a one-touch connection request. So first of all, you've got a photograph of their card. You can then export those contacts from Card Munch into your phone book, into the contacts. So from a productivity perspective, there's applications now that link to LinkedIn that allow you to make those connections. One photograph, and you could be sitting here, you might have swapped cards with somebody outside, and you could be taking photographs, and I don't want you to do that because hopefully you're going to listen to me, but you can do it in that kind of scenario. And if we just think about LinkedIn for a moment, LinkedIn's only been around since May 2003, so it's still a relatively young business, but in the .com era, it's a pretty old business. The thing that I want to stress to you tonight is that it is the world's biggest business-to-business network. And those of you that are part of groups, those of you that have a LinkedIn profile, how many are on groups? Quite a few of you. Because the groups are essentially subsets of the larger pool of people, and those groups themselves are borderless, but also they're an ability to network virtually with a group of peers. Some statistics about the users of LinkedIn, the gender balance is pretty much 50-50. 3 out of 4 users use it for business purposes. I think that's a bit of a no-brainer. Why would you not be using LinkedIn if you're not using it to grow your business network? But the interesting thing is the linger time on LinkedIn, whether it's an app or a browser, is that it's about 8 minutes per visit. So compared to Twitter at about 90 seconds, you can see that people linger on LinkedIn a bit longer. So some tips for you. Photographs are critical, only because of what other users think when they see a profile without a photograph. There's 2 things that go through each one of our minds, even though we won't admit it. When we don't see a photograph, we go, what are they hiding? And it doesn't matter whether you're good looking or look like Brad Pitt or whatever, photographs are about credibility. And the good thing is that when we meet on an event like this, if I then look you up and I can immediately, in the selections that are provided to me, go, oh, that's the gentleman that I spoke with at PMI. The other thing too about photographs is that it's a great way to identify people. And people say to me, but normally it's where you'd have, John Smith, and you'd want to find the right John Smith by looking at their photograph if you've met them before. But I use myself as an example. There is another GordonShaw who was born in the same month and the same year as me, who's an investment banker in Hong Kong. And having photographs means that if people type in GordonShaw, they get his profile and mine when they do a search. So having a photograph distinguishes you. The other one too, tip for the ladies, if you're known by your maiden name and you're married or vice versa, or you change your name, photographs allow people to go, oh, but I worked with you 5 years ago at this company and your name might have been that. Now it's that. They can kind of make those connections. So I encourage you to add a photograph. And in the don'ts section, there's some don'ts about what you don't do with the photographs. But what you need is a head and shoulders shot, a professional one. And what I mean professional is you can get somebody to take one on your iPhone or your smartphone, a head and shoulders, looking at the camera, smiling, and put that on your profile. The other one too is the summary section. When people see your profiles, the heading, which has got your photograph and some basic information, then the summary is the key part. And we've got about 10 seconds to make an impression. So a killer summary is a summary that tells people about you, what you do, what your experience is, what your expertise is, but also is full of keywords, because what LinkedIn does is LinkedIn uses keywords in all of your profile, but in the summary, to search for you when people are saying, I want to know about project managers that are in Auckland that have an experience in portfolio management. If in your summary you have put project management, portfolio management, Auckland, what it's doing is helping the algorithm, the search algorithm, find you. So the good way of looking at good summaries is to find people that you think have got good summaries and just look at how they're written and try and replicate that. I'm not saying copy them, but look at what they've got and try and follow. And there's no I can't give you a specific template to use because they have to be individualised to you. But keywords, keep it high level, simple. But you'd have a certain number of characters, about 600 that you can use. So use as much as possible to tell people about you. Connections. Add connections. So when you come to events like this, if you want to connect with somebody afterwards on LinkedIn, then do that. Connections are good because it just increases the size of your network. There's quite a bit of debate at the moment around the difference between a recommendation and an endorsement. One of the things that LinkedIn have done in the last few months is that you can list skills on your summary, and then anyone on LinkedIn can endorse you for those skills. And there's quite a bit of debate around, if you've never worked with somebody, and I've got a new connection who I've never worked with, but we're connected because we've met, and this person has endorsed me for every one of my skills. I've never worked with the person. So I have to say to you, does that add any credibility to my profile? And the answer is no. The value is where you get people that you do know giving you endorsements for those key skills. Because again, in search algorithms, LinkedIn look at the number of endorsements you have per skill, and that will put you higher up in the search rankings. So it's worth doing, but if you're wanting really good information that potential employers or potential headhunters or potential customers might look at, it's the recommendation. That's where you ask somebody that you know directly, can you please write a recommendation about me? And that takes some thinking time. You actually have to think, I need to give essentially a reference, and it's written, so they are more powerful on your profile than endorsements. And so what I encourage people to do is, if you've got a number of positions listed, try and connect with somebody that you worked with, a senior person in those companies, and ask them to recommend you, because that looks really good, especially to recruiters and headhunters when they see specific recommendations. We've talked about groups. Joining a group's really cool, but getting active is even better. So what I mean there is contribute content, good content, share content, answer questions, get involved. And there's fantastic project management groups within LinkedIn. And again, when you get active, it raises your profile, because everyone that's a group member can see what you're doing. So again, it's about your professional credibility. The other one too is updates. People ask me, how often should I put in an update, a personal update? Because LinkedIn allows you to write an update in your profile that your connections see. And again, this comes back to your own personal strategy, how often you want to do that. I suggest that you don't default to quantity. Quality will trump quantity hands down on LinkedIn, because some people get annoyed that you're always updating things. So if you've got something to share or to announce, then by all means do that. And I've got an example on my profile where today I put in a thing there saying I'm looking forward to giving this presentation, and gave a hyperlink to the PMI's website and information about that. So those are the kind of things where you can make updates. But again, you need to think about how often, if any, updates that you make. Because some people say, I don't feel comfortable doing updates, and that's cool. That's okay. But when you feel you've got something to announce, and for example in PMI, if you pass a PMI exam or you get a new accreditation, those are the kind of things that you want to tell your connections, that hey, I'm now PMP certified, or I've got MSP or Prince 2, whatever that may be. You can then tell your connections of that. Just before we go online, just a couple of don'ts before we go online. When it comes to pictures, I told you about head and shoulders photographs. Don't use a cartoon. Don't use a family picture. Don't use cartoon characters or avatars. It just doesn't send the right message in a business-to-business professional network. And people say to me, but hang on a minute, I've got this photograph that looks really cool, and I saw one today, believe it or not, of a guy smoking a cigar in a bar. That was his profile photo. Do you think I want to do business with that guy? So again, it has to be fit for purpose. You might say, I sell cigars, that's my business. Well, that's cool, that would fit. But if you don't sell cigars, then why would you have so you see where I'm coming from there. It has to be fit for purpose. And please don't put any photographs on LinkedIn of you drinking alcohol. That's a real big switch off for potential employers. And I see a lot of it. They'll say, oh, I'll just use that photograph, and they don't realise that there's a Heineken in the hand or a glass of wine. If you're going to do that, at least crop it down so that it's head and shoulders, that you don't have the sponsor's product there. Again, unless you work for Heineken or Montana or something like that, but just be careful because it's the impression that you give to others that look at your profiles. A key one that I get a lot is spam from my contacts, and that, to be perfectly honest, really pees me off. When you connect with people that you believe there's a connection and you do business with, getting unsolicited mail and updates from LinkedIn is really annoying. And it's even more annoying when you ask people to stop doing it and they don't. That's when I go in and go, I don't want to be connected with you anymore. The other thing too is about sharing content. Sometimes when you put in a hyperlink to some content, some people haven't checked what that hyperlink takes people to. So if you're going to share links to other websites, at least try out the link to make sure it's not going off to Kazakhstan or somewhere where they're trying to data mine information for other purposes, so just be aware of that. Another one that you need to get used to is when you ask people to connect, LinkedIn's really cool, it gives you a default template. It just has a couple of lines with your name underneath it, say I want to connect with you on LinkedIn. There's a time when you can use that. If you know people and you know them well and you just want to flick off a connection request, that's cool. But if you're trying to make an impression with somebody that maybe is a second degree connection, personalise those invites. So say to people, Gordon, we met at the PMI presentation last night. I'd really like to connect with you on LinkedIn. That's all it takes. Just personalise it. And I get tons of people just sending me the default ones that I don't know. And now there's a function on LinkedIn, and I'll show you how to do that, where you don't accept them, you can send them a message back saying, thanks for the connection request. And my standard response is, thanks for the connection request. By the way, how do we know each other? And why do you think I should connect with you? And that's all it takes. Hey, I met you at this function. I'd really like to connect with you on LinkedIn. That's all it takes. And I've talked about the quantity and quality. What I want to talk to you about is using LinkedIn to search. And you can see that there's a number of criteria where you can search by keywords, names, location, titles, past or current, companies, schools. There's a whole lot of things you can do. And you can see here, anything that's got this little LinkedIn, that's a premium account search criteria. So what I'm asking you to do is to start using this, especially keywords. If I just, and I'm just going to put my head down, if I put project management, and I put New Zealand and hit search, so I don't do anything else, what it's going to do is, and you may see some familiar faces here like Karen Clark and Sean. So what it does is, that is looking at my first level connections. But you can see what it's doing here is that because these people have used the term project management in their profiles, it picks this up. So what I'm saying to you to do is to use the advanced searching when you're trying to find things about key search terms. When you're in your profile, you can see that certain things get hyperlinked. So I went to Massey University. If I wanted to just do a search, a quick search on the term Massey University, you can do a search straight away from your own profiles based on things that are hyperlinked in your own profiles. So I'd like one volunteer to win some chocolate that I could look at their profile for them. So straight away, because we've done a specific name search, it brings up your profile. And it shows that, first of all, that we're a second level connection, believe it or not, because I'm connected to others that you're connected to. I then click on your profile, and this is what I see. So some people, this might be the first time you're seeing, even though you get to view your own profile when you sign in, this just shows you how it gets presented to other users. And so the two things I want you to take away tonight is, first of all, this is what's called the headline section. Your photograph, your name, details about what you do, and you can see there that I can ask you for more information, get introduced, references, share your profile, so there's a whole lot of things I can do. And then the summary, because you can see the way that this is produced on the screen is I get to see some overview details about Muhammad, and then his summary. They're the first things I see. That's why I'm encouraging you to look at and update your headline, photograph, and your summary. How many of you use this company section? Because what I'm recommending there is that when you're interested in certain companies within industries, search them. First of all, you can do a company search, and then you can decide whether you want to follow them. The good thing about following a company is you get their updates, but you might specifically follow a company because you're interested in any recruitment opportunities. And a lot more businesses now are advertising using LinkedIn for their job section. Here's one here that I'm following, Domo, and they're hiring. So that appears in that stream of information from the companies that they're looking for a senior sales consultant. And the other one that doesn't get used a lot is the job section. Depending on the companies that you follow, you can then go out to certain companies and see what's happening. What it also does is when there's a role, it tells you these people can also give you introductions. It's an interesting construct. So my encouragement to you is these hyperlinked tabs at the top. Start maybe 5 minutes a day going into each one that you've never been into before and actually having a look and seeing what's in there. Because the other one, of course, is LinkedIn trying to compete with Google and lots of news aggregators, is that they now have a new section where your contacts who are sharing news items, they put them into a stream just for you, so it's your own news stream and you can tailor it to your own particular needs. So that the key one there is to have a look and just play, because if you get stuck, you can always just shut it down and start again. One thing too that I want to talk about, and because we're project managers, risk management is important to us, is that think about having a risk management strategy for your social media approach. And the reason that I say that is that never ever drink and go on LinkedIn or drink and go on Twitter, because we get examples like this, and you can see some of them. Some of them you may recognise. Qantas had a fantastic one where they had a competition which was called a hashtag on Twitter called Qantas Luxury. They launched that 2 days before they grounded their entire fleet. So the hashtag got taken over by people venting about the poor service rather than Qantas's luxury. And this is my all classic, and excuse the language, but this is verbatim. Have a look at this one here. That's somebody tweeting on their company's social page that blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so just bear in mind that whatever you put on social media, your employer can look at, your potential employer can look at, and your peers can look at. And that comes to Facebook, because Facebook, again, having a strategy around saying, and you might get people tonight try and friend you on Facebook. Having a strategy that says, actually, I use Facebook for my family and friends. If we're a business contact, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn. Just encouraging people to do that. And of course, there are people where you're business contacts and you're linked on LinkedIn, and you're also good mates, so you're linked on Facebook. But if your strategy is for most business contacts, link to me on LinkedIn, don't try and ask me to be a friend on Facebook. So again, that's just about having strategy. So what I want to leave you with tonight in a conclusion is that business social media and LinkedIn, it's not going to go away. It's certainly not an experiment, and we've only just scratched the surface tonight on things that we can do in LinkedIn. That being engaged and having a strategy of using LinkedIn is just good business sense. Technology today with these kind of devices drives immediacy and response, and that's quite cool, especially when you meet people in these kind of events and you can connect to them by the time you get home. But as long as you're not trying to do it while you drive, of course, I wouldn't recommend that. Convergence is happening at a pace, and what I'm talking about there is we're seeing, social media sites acquiring other social media sites, acquiring other social media sites. So some of the main ones just keep acquiring, so that the technology is converging, and so is the access to social media. And if you run your own business or your own consultancy and you don't have a company page, you need to have one, because sooner or later LinkedIn are going to charge us to have company pages, because that's LinkedIn's a business that makes money. They'll have a free section, but then they'll start charging premium. So if you don't have a company page, or even your employer doesn't have one, tell them that they need to get on and have a company page and get active. But more importantly, you need to manage your own profiles. So have a strategy, manage it, learn more, trial and error, and seek out people like me that, when you've got a question and you can't find an answer for it, just ask. Thank you for the opportunity, and I just want to leave you with a thought that, from a competitive perspective, if you're not looking after your own brand, no one else will. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.